Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hidden Gems podcast. And this is the show where we like to talk about a streaming service and the hidden gems that you can find on that service. It's a lot of fun. And now I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Ryan is here.
Hey Rachel, it's great to be back with you once again, and I feel like we're at the end of August. When this drops, it will actually, I believe, we will be firmly
Yeah.
in September. I
Yeah.
feel like we're about to be just swept by just an absolute avalanche. Like we're just this little town, and as us content creators, we're the little town, and like the lava from the volcano is just going to wipe us
Yeah,
off the map.
especially if you're me, because Christmas movie starts in the middle of October. And also we've got award season coming up before you know it. So I've got both of those to look forward to. And yeah, one of the co-hosts was putting on Twitter that only 2 more months till Christmas movies start, and I said the panic begins.
You should have been like, "Oh, you have no I mean, it
There's at
must be,
least 153 this year, probably more than that. New Christmas movies, because there's so many more players becoming involved. Like Tubi's making them, HBO Max is making them. Um, I don't know. There was just like a long list of new people and I'm like, oh, those sound really good. I want to watch those. I'm like,
when people ask you like what you do for a living, you should be like, it's just pretty much Christmas for me
yeah,
always."
yes. Yes, I always have my Santa hat handy. I'm always ready to go. Talk about Christmas at all times. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty good life. I mean, if that's your biggest problem is covering too many Christmas movies, I think you have a pretty good gig.
Yeah, that's not me throwing shade. I mean, you've clearly done something right to end up in this position.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and I've got D23 coming up, so that's going to be intense and exciting, fun, and everything. But yeah, you got anything exciting coming up in September? Anything fun?
Well, as we're recording this, tomorrow I have orientation for my new job.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, I'm going to be starting working in my local library. Uh,
Okay.
there was a
Yeah.
position I applied for it just kind of like because I've been through COVID, I got laid off 3 times. So I guess out of just habit of just looking for that next thing, I
Mm-hmm.
just always kept an eye on Indeed or
Sure.
job boards just to see what was out there. I've gone to the library pretty much consistently my whole life. So, and my mom was like, "You should find a job there." I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe it's a volunteer thing only." But sure enough, Indeed, they had like a ton of library positions. So I was like, it'd be funny if I got hired. And about a month later, I got hired. And uh,
That's
and my
great.
and my orientation is tomorrow. And so I don't want to say I'm nervous to like start. I'm just nervous to get started. I'm that
Yeah.
kind of nervous where I'm just like looking at my clock and it's like, oh, it's 8:06. I need it to be 8:15 now so I can like get started at,
Yeah.
at the courthouse. But it's also a bit of nervous because I liked the staff. I liked what I was doing for the most part at my old job, but I have this overwhelming feeling that I'm making the right decision. So, new adventure. I am greatly looking forward to it.
That's great. I'll keep you in my prayers. Hopefully it goes perfectly. That's very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank
Uh,
you.
w- well,
Um,
it's good that we decided to record this on Sunday then, so we could get it out of the way for the week, because you're gonna have an exciting week.
well,
But what are
Sundays are
we? Oh, sorry,
Sundays
go
are
ahead.
good days for me pretty much always.
Yeah.
Regardless of it was a normal week or not.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today? What service?
We're covering Hulu and talk about like if they were giving out like streaming service redemption of the year awards or make up a
Yeah.
snazzier title than that. And I think Hulu would definitely be taking the crown because if any of you are paying attention to movies like Prey, like that movie is cleaning up like in
Hmm.
in terms of people just watching it and viewing it. Not to mention that because it's owned by Disney, it pretty much has all of the Searchlight movies, all of the 20th Century Studios movies, all of FX's stuff is on there. I
Mm-hmm.
just got started watching the show called We Are Wrexham. It's the show about
Oh.
where Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney just bought a soccer team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only about halfway through the first episode and I'm really digging it. So Hulu has got a lot to offer. They're basically the home of FX now. So if any of you are into like Sons of Anarchy or Justified, then Hulu is definitely your spot.
Yeah.
And just generally speaking, like they've got another round on there, which I believe I recommended somewhere, but that's another
Mm-hmm.
awesome movie. Hulu has been doing really good lately.
Yeah. I do think the Hulu is a little bit confusing though now. I don't really understand what it is because now that you have, it used to be, okay, this is the adult arm of Disney, so it made sense. But now that you have Deadpool and, these kinds of things, you have mature content now on Disney Plus. I don't really understand what makes something a Hulu property and what makes something a Disney Plus property anymore.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I was thinking, oh, if this is just going to be where all the near the knuckle Marvel stuff is. And I was looking, they got the Raimi Spider-Man movies on there, which I mean, that's like I mean, that's definitely not R-rated Marvel, but there you go. So I definitely see what you're saying, and they're gonna have to do some like definitive like knowing
Mm-hmm.
identity of setting this place aside for this content and this place aside for this.
Yeah. I feel like when Bob Iger was in charge of Disney, there was like a clear branding. Everything was very clear of what a Disney film was, what a Marvel film was, this kind of thing. And I feel like the branding, since we got Bob Chapek now, I think it's been a lot more diluted, the branding.
Yeah, and believe me, Disney is not like taking the crown for like stupidest executive decisions. I mean,
Yeah.
WB well all over that, but I regularly watch the John Campea show, and recent tweets about RRR aside, I tend to trust a lot of his opinions.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of the stuff he said about Bob Chapek, I tend to agree with him on. Chapek just seems like the kind of guy who's just he's kind of fixed what wasn't broken. He's seen the wheel and he's like, you know what this wheel needs? Some corners.
Yes. That's a good way to describe it. Yes. It's interesting. Well, but I agree with you. I think that there is a ton of good stuff to watch on Hulu, and they have different price strategies that can make it pretty affordable. So it's a good service to get. You can get it in like a bundle with ESPN and Disney Plus. So you can't go wrong. But what is your first hidden gem that you want to talk about for Hulu?
So my first pick is a movie from last year. It's from late last year and is called The King's Man. And this is the third Kingsman movie. It's technically a prequel, but it's Kingsman Secret Service, or it's The King's Man, Kingsman the Secret Service, and Kingsman the Golden Circle. And this movie follows the inception of the Kingsman Secret Service. The main guy is played by Ralph Fiennes. I'm a big fan of his, and it basically shows how during World War One, basically there was a need to create something outside of the military to try and work in the background to try and stop certain things. And I I get this movie kind of underwhelmed. There was some people who were like, it was just okay. There were some parts of that movie that I genuinely really enjoyed. It's pretty much just okay. But when the movie peaks, it really does peak. There's a great sequence where Ralph finds his son in the movie is in battle and he's crossing no man's land. This takes place during World War One, and he's crossing no man's land and he sees this German soldier, and because of the rules of engagement, they can't speak. They can't say, "Hey, I need reinforcements." They're literally have to fight in silence, and it is really it's helmed very well. I'm very That was a very well done scene, and the rest of the movie's pretty solid. Also, you got Digimon Hansu. I'm a big fan of his work. And like I said, I think the movie was criminally underseen. And I mean, it's still 2021. COVID was still a bit of a factor, and this movie was delayed to pretty much nothingness, which makes me sad. But overall, grand scheme, I really enjoyed this one.
Do you have to have seen the previous films to be able to appreciate this one?
No, this is a prequel, so it adds the context of Colin Firth's opening monologue where he's talking to Eggsy, and he's like, when the Kingsman was founded, there was a lot of money that was left untouched because all of the heirs died during World War One, hence the creation of Kingsman: The Secret Service. This movie pretty much sets up how the system was created, how they gave each other names like Arthur and Lancelot and Guinevere, the whole nine there, and pretty much lays all the groundwork for the rest of the movies. And it even has enough Kingsman like Easter eggs from the previous two movies to where you'd be like, oh, I know where that is, except this movie takes place in 1916, 1915 or 16. So the technology is down a bit for obvious reasons, but you definitely see recognizable stuff and you see the inception point of that. So it definitely adds to the enjoyment of the first two.
Mm. Yeah, I actually interviewed the composer, Dominic Lewis, one of the composers of this movie, way back, uh, for an animated project he was working on. I can't even remember what the animated project was, but anyway, I so that was my only real connection to this film. But I haven't seen any of the Kingsman movies, so uh,
It's
but
also
yeah.
it's also not as violent as the other two. So
Oh, that's good to know.
there's no Colin Firth shooting a bunch of people to Freebird like in the first one, even
Yeah,
though
in a
that scene is
church.
awesome. But
I've heard about that scene in the church.
probably the most violent scene is the finale, but even then, it's like PG-13 violence. It
Mm.
doesn't go like too far
Oh,
as I
that's
remember. There's some
yeah.
disturbing implications with the Rasputin character, but it's more implications than like
Mm-hmm.
actively saying so.
Yeah. Well, very good. I'll definitely have to check that out. So my first choice was a big surprise. One of my biggest surprises of this movie season was the Bob's Burgers movie. I have not been able to get into the show. I've started it a number of times. I think it's one of those ones that maybe like the first season is a little rough, and then once you kind of get into it, then you get into it. Uh, because I went to this movie thinking I wasn't gonna enjoy it that much, and maybe low expectations helped, but I really had a good time with it. I thought it was so funny, so sweet, family story. The music was a lot of fun. The animation was well done, and there were some really cool scenes with the 2D animation that I enjoyed. The voice acting was all really solid. I liked it way more than I expected, especially because I just haven't been able to get into the show.
Now it's my turn to ask, do you have, and I think you may have answered this for me, but do you have to have seen the show to actually appreciate it?
No, I don't think so. They do a pretty good job introducing you to all the characters. I haven't seen very many episodes, so certainly in like a chronological way, you don't need to have seen it. Like it doesn't have anything connecting to the to whatever's the last episode of that's been aired of the show. So it's not you don't need to in that sense. You might be more sort of invested in the characters uh if you're invested in the show, but I have not seen very many episodes and I did fine. So, yeah. And I was surprised. I didn't realize that they had so many songs, I guess, in the show. And that's a big way to hook me. Make it a musical. I'm probably gonna like it. So it was a big surprise. I enjoyed it way more than I expected. So yeah, and you can watch Bob's Burgers the show as well on Hulu.
Symmetry. You
Yeah,
love
that's
to
right.
see.
So what is your next pick?
So my next choice, and honestly, these four I thought I had recommended before, but I looked on our letterboxed and I could, or on your letterbox list that you created for this, and I could not find it. So I'm going to correct that on this episode. So these next four can basically be grouped into stuff I thought I recommended, but I didn't, and I'm correcting that. So first up is a movie from 2011, and it is called In Time. This was written and directed by Andrew Niccol, who wrote and directed My Beloved Gattaca, and also wrote the screenplay for The Truman Show. It tells the story of a future where time is literally money, like literally people pay for things with like, how much is this? It's about a minute and a half, and they do this and they exchange time like actual currency. The movie's main lead is Justin Timberlake. He lives with his mom. Now, in this future, people stop aging genetically at 21. So everyone's a walking 21-year-old basically, but they're in terms of age, they're like 28, 29, 30, older in certain cases. At the start of the movie, Olivia Wilde looks like she's in her early 20s, but she's actually celebrating her 50th birthday. So that explains why Olivia Wilde looks like Olivia Wilde in the movie, but she's billed as 50.
Hmm.
There's a reason as to why. But because of the whole time is money thing, there is still massive income inequality. The super rich basically live 100-ish years, 120 years, while the poor literally like live hour by hour. It's really sharp contrast. But one of the super rich who is actually the main lead in this USA TV show called White Collar. I can't remember his name. It's Matt something. I'm sorry.
Oh, Bomer?
That's him. Yeah, Matt
Yeah.
Bomer. He meets Timberlake and they start a conversation, and Bomer asks Timberlake how old he is. He says 28, and Bomer says, I'm 103, despite the fact that he looks like Matt Bomer. Like he looks like he just walked off a movie set. Well, Bomer commits suicide, but before that, he gives all 120-ish years of his life to Timberlake. And so Timberlake basically tries to do a Count of Monte Cristo and infiltrate the upper class for revenge because his mom actually got robbed of like 20-ish years, I think, if my memory serves, and she died literally running into her son's arms. It's quite brutal. And I kind I love Gattaca. The movie is just, I have a whole review of it on my channel. And this is not like hard sci-fi, but it's definitely leaning towards the more thinking type of sci-fi. So it's not for everyone. However, the reviews of this movie were kind of bad, but I've always really liked this one. I've liked the concept. Justin Timberlake is actually kind of sort of a good actor. If you all have ever seen Social Network, he's really good in there. Amanda Seyfried is his romantic interest, and she's good here too. And I just love this concept of literally time being money and people having to negotiate with what we do with like dollars and cents. We do it with like years and decades. And they're one of the more tense scenes in the movies when Timberlake and this other dude do an arm wrestling contest where they do this and they're like balancing each other, and the timer on their wrist just goes down, but then the power balance shifts and the other one turn, and it's literally a battle to the death because when their clock hits zero, then they keel over and die. It's honestly quite tense. It's more tense than I'm describing it
Hmm.
as. It's a pretty good cast. Cillian Murphy is the main villain, and he's always good. Johnny Galecki from the Big Bang Theory and Roseanne. He has a small part in it, but it's nice to see him there. I don't know. This one just hits me in my sci-fi roots, so I've always been a champion of this one.
So if you have more hours, do you actually physically age slower?
No, you stop aging at 21, so you look 21 for as
Oh,
long
okay.
as you live. And when your clock on your arm runs zero, that's when you die. Unless like, people are not invincible. You can get shot or run over. But if you live long enough and you can get more time, then you can conceivably live a super long time. So it's interesting like that.
Yeah, that is interesting. I've heard about this, but I've never seen it, so it's an interesting recommendation. I do also love Gattaca. That is a very good sci-fi film. All right. Well, my next choice, this is one of your hard lefts, is uh, one of my favorite rom-coms. It's My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Absolutely love this movie. I think it's so funny. And a lot of times the comedy, the calm of the rom-com gets kind of left out and forgotten. They're not that funny. This one is genuinely very, very funny. Uh, just everything with her family cracks me up. I mean, when her aunt tells the story about her the mole that she had that had a spine on it. It was I don't know, hilarious. And she's like, and they're like, Ian's vegetarian. Uh, that's okay. We've made lamb. Just there's just a lot of really funny jokes, and her father is like obsessed with Windex and spraying it on everybody, and uh, I just love it. I think it's so funny. Such great chemistry between Nia Vardalos and John Corbett. The rest of the cast is really fun. It's one of my faves.
Isn't this the movie where the father goes like when the main girl, I can't think of her name, but when she's like, I'm getting married to this person, and the dad's like, why are you leaving me? Is that the one? Like, is
Well, there's he definitely gets upset. I'm not sure if it's that one, but he's not happy about it. And her name is Tula in the movie,
Tula?
and
I was
Tula,
blanking on that. I'm sorry.
yeah. And her father is always saying he can turn any word into a Greek word, and so one of the kids is like, well, how about kimono? Which is obviously a Japanese word. And he finds a way. I don't know. It's just genuinely really, really, really funny. And you don't see romantic comedies enough that actually are actually comedies. There's a lot of movies that are labeled rom-coms that I don't even think are comedies at all. I mean, something like Sleepless in Seattle, as much as I love it, it's barely a comedy. It's all about grief and loss and all of that. I mean, there are some funny sequences, but I think it's at best a dramedy. So anyway, this one is one that's actually very funny. So you've never seen it, right?
I actually have not. I've seen
Yeah,
certain scenes. I know what happens, but I have not seen it all the way through.
yeah. It's a good one. I think you'd like it. So what is your next pick?
So my next choice is also, I believe, from 2011, and it is called Source Code. This was directed by Duncan Jones, son of David Bowie. He would go on to unfortunately direct Warcraft, but I won't hold that too much against him. He did direct the movie called Moon, which is really good despite Kevin Spacey being the villain in it. It tells the story. Source Code tells the story of a man played by Jake Gyllenhaal who wakes up on a train, and it seems like, all right, what's he doing on this train? But then the train explodes, and the next thing he knows, he wakes up in a dark room. And basically, his job is to go back and relive the same 38 minutes on this train to find where the bomb is and defuse it. So it's basically like Groundhog Day, but more extreme and combined with the ending to the first Mission Impossible. Everybody got that? The movie's actually quite good. Jake Gyllenhaal's the main guy. I mean, it's Jake Gyllenhaal, so of course he's good. Michelle Monaghan is the love interest, and she's good too. Vera Farmiga plays the woman who talks to Gyllenhaal through like a video monitor, because without spoiling anything, Gyllenhaal is injured in a way that basically he can't leave the room. That's all I will say. You'll have to see it for yourself. Jeffrey Wright, who's always good, he plays like the main doctor who came up with the idea of sending people back to a certain time to stop a tragedy from happening. And this is definitely of the Groundhog Day formula where Gyllenhaal has to just navigate everything, and even to the point where he's like, I can just get off the train. And he gets off the train, but the bomb still explodes. So it's literally just a game of him going back, looking and failing, and going back and looking and failing. It's a formula that they would do with Edge of Tomorrow a couple of years later. And while I will say Edge of Tomorrow is better, I will say that Source Code is really good also. What hampers this movie is the ending. It's going to be divisive if you do watch it. I remember I remember seeing some reviews and people just not being high on the ending, and it's really going to be your mileage is going to vary. That's all I'll say. However, it's an intriguing mystery. I kind of love these time loop movies where people are stuck in a certain amount of time and they have to do something and repeat it until they get it right. There's something super intriguing about that. And yeah, I give this one a heavy recommendation, minus the ending.
Yeah, I remember feeling that way about the ending, and I do think that The Edge of Tomorrow is a better film. But
Definitely.
I remember enjoying this one. I think that Jake Gyllenhaal and Michelle Monaghan have really good chemistry together in those
Absolutely.
scenes. And so if they were ever in a rom-com together, I'd be excited.
Yeah, and Michelle Monaghan, I think Michelle Monaghan is someone who doesn't get nearly enough credit. I mean she's well liked as far as I know, but just looking up and down like the things that she has been in, like she was Ethan Hunt's kind of sort of wife in the Mission Impossible movie.
Hmm.
She was his wife in 3, but then they kind of had a soft separation because I mean Ethan Hunt has literally one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet, so he's like, sorry, I gotta get you off the grid. But it was nice to see her in Fallout and nice to have those timelines sort of merge again. She's been in Gone Baby Gone. She's a really good actress, and I don't want to say she's completely forgotten. It's just I don't think she's talked about nearly enough as she deserves.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd agree. I think she is good. All right. Well, my next pick is a movie called The Valet. This is a rom-com from this year, and it stars Eugenio Derbez, who I really like. Even in that Overboard remake that they did a few years ago, he was charming in it, and I think I've liked. Well, he's in Jack and Jill. I don't like that, but he's in Coda, and he's really good in that as the teacher. He's in this. He's in Overboard. I don't know. I find him very, very, very charming, and he's in this, and he plays this valet Parker guy, and he's kind of going through a separation with his wife, and things are hard, and he through various conferences ends up meeting this Hollywood celebrity, this is played by Samara Weaving, and she's dating Max Greenfeld, and well, she's having an affair with Max Greenfeld, and so she ends up getting caught going out with Max Greenfeld. And so they developed this whole scheme that the valet driver that she happened to be with, that's who she's actually dating. And so they agree to pay him like a ton of money to go along with this scheme about because they don't want it to affect her new movie. And it's silly, it's ridiculous, but I really like fake dating stories. Those are some of my favorites. They're a lot of fun. And I think Samara Weaving is maybe a little miscast in it. I didn't quite buy her as this like superstar, like so famous. But it works well enough. And Max Greenfield he keeps getting cast in these movies where he's like a total jerk. And like in Promising Young Women, and I don't know, I just feel like a number of movies I've seen with him where he's a real jerk. So I think he needs to be careful. He needs to be a nice person.
He's gonna get
Uh,
typecast
yeah, he's gonna get typecast.
if he
Uh,
hasn't
but
been so already.
but Eugenio is really good in this movie. There's a lot of heart to his character. And they have some nice bonding, some nice dialogue. It's just one of those movies that looks like it won't be very good, but then actually is a lot of fun if you give it a shot.
Yeah, I remember Eugenio Derbez must be doing something right because I remember I was still working at my local theater when How to Be a Latin Lover was out, And
Mhm.
that movie not only got an English release at our theater, but it got a Spanish release at our theater. So
Yeah.
there's clearly something to him, and 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 what I have seen of him, I've actually kind of enjoyed. I enjoy, like, he's clearly got charisma for days. The
Mhm.
Samara Weaving thing, I do agree. I haven't seen it, but really enjoyed Samara Weaving in Ready or Not, which is another movie I recommend everyone check out. But that's like the only thing I've seen her in. I think she's been in more stuff, but I don't know. It just seems a
There's
bit weird.
there's a side of me that thinks that because they couldn't get Margot Robbie because she's making Barbie movies and things like that, they got her because she looks a lot like Margot Robbie. So I don't know. That's just theory. I have
Quick,
no
who's
backup for
quick?
that
Who's
though.
a Hollywood blonde? Samara, come here. We got a job for you.
They really do look a lot alike. They could play sisters, I think, her and Margot Robbie. They really
I'd
do.
buy it.
So if you like rom-coms, I think this one is cute. So, what do you have next?
Well, here's my hard left for the evening. This is a film from 2017, and it is called Detroit. This was directed by Catherine Bigelow, who also directed movies like Point Break and The Hurt Locker. And this is based on the unfortunate true story of, well, Detroit having a really bad summer in 1967. And considering recently things that have happened in the news, it's unfortunately a pretty relevant movie. I thought when I first saw the movie, I thought it was a bit preachy at times, but I think the movie has just gotten better, not just because of the messaging, but because it's a very well made movie. I mean, Catherine Bigelow is a very underrated director. I mean, she directed Point Break, for goodness sake. Like, she knows what she is doing,
Yeah.
and that goes double here. John Boyega is in here, and he gives my favorite performance of his. I'm glad he's actually getting more work in movies like Breaking and the upcoming The Woman King. Star Wars did him so dirty, and that's a tangent I'm not going to go on here. I'll be here all day. But they did him so dirty, and I'm glad that he's getting much better deals after what happened. But he's really good here. Will Patton is slowly becoming like he's going to get typecast as a villain for the rest of his career too. I mean, maybe it's something in his face, but he's really good as well. And this movie is just it's terrifying in the realness and just how raw it feels. I don't recommend this as like oh, I'm looking for something light and breezy. Let's turn on Detroit. Like, I don't do that. No, you're going to get exactly what you pay for, or will not pay for, but you all get my point. But it's a very rough watch, but it's also really important. And it also kind of leans into the subgenre of movie I really like, where it's a smaller side of history that doesn't nearly get talked about enough. I guess it's why I loved Summer of Soul so much. It's a story that I had never heard of and was just so fascinating to watch. But while Summer of Soul was a celebration, Detroit was the complete opposite of that. But I give this a modest recommendation, but know what you're going into before you go in.
Yeah, I agree. It's well made. It is extremely brutal. It's a movie I would never want to watch again, but yeah, I guess I'm glad I saw it. I did recommend it. The acting is excellent. You do feel like, boy, could they give us like a moment to breathe a little bit? But I mean, I guess that's what happened. I don't know. I'm no expert on the situation. It does feel like a movie that probably should have been made by a person of color, by a black person, but you know, she's a good director, so she did a good job. Um, and yeah, I mean, it definitely draws you in and is very, very traumatic. So don't watch it. I wouldn't definitely not watch it with kids, that's for sure. I mean, it's rated R, but still.
Yeah, really.
Adults only on this one. Well, my next recommendation is a mixed bag. It's not a perfect film. I'm going to talk about Death on the Nile. This is, of course, the recent adaptation of the Agatha Christie novel. And I do think that this movie takes way too long to get going before the murders actually happen and the mystery kind of gets going. It's long And there's also some really weird things that he does. Whenever the movie tries to be sexy, I think it just is strange. Like there's this whole long scene where there's this sexy dancing, which it just feels like, I don't know, it feels like it's directed by a person who's never actually seen sexy dancing before because it just feels so weird. But I mean, it's Kenneth Branagh. He's, of course, plays Poirot in the movie. And you have all of the characters that you get to know. And once the actual first murder happens and you get into the mystery, then it starts to get fun. And then you're putting all the pieces together and everything. And there are parts that are really well made and well done, scenes that are well done. There's also parts that look really cheap, which is confusing because they had like a long time to make this movie and to fix it. So I don't really understand why they had such terrible green screen and things like that. But it's still like a solid mystery is if you just want something kind of fun to watch on a Saturday like this. You can watch Detroit to become a better person. You watch Death on the Nile to relax.
Yeah, I feel kind of sad for the people that were involved in this, like the filmmakers and the crew, because just this movie just could not catch a it couldn't catch a break. It was delayed
Mhm.
and delayed and delayed again. The whole Army Hammer situation, which had to be reconfigured for very obvious reasons. I just feel it just it's a sucky situation, and I think I said in my review, I believe I did a review on it. I'll have to look it up, but I believe I said on Twitter that it was better than I thought it was going to be. They managed to cobble something that
Yeah.
was watchable, but I mean, they were clearly hampered by their circumstances, which is just it's just a
Well, I
shame.
mean, they'd filmed it before the Army Hammer thing had come out, but they had to work, I guess they maybe changed some things with the editing, but yeah, then you had the whole Letitia Wright thing, and there was just a lot of kind of bad publicity going into the movie. And there are things, like I said, I'm like, why didn't you make that better? You had all this time. Like, I don't understand why some of the CGI was so sloppy, but I still overall had fun with it. I liked it better than the first one, which I thought was the first one I thought was really boring, which is like the greatest sin of all. I'd rather have something be messy than be boring. I mean, literally the like last half of the movie is just Poirot standing in front of a table explaining things to people. It's not, there's no sense. They did such a terrible job of developing any kind of mystery. At least like this, there were a few things that surprised me. And maybe it helped that I actually hadn't read the book where I had read the book on the first one. So I knew what was happening in the first one, but I have read it now since. But Death on the Nile. But it could have been better. But if you're jonesing for a mystery, you're waiting for the new Knives Out movie to come, it's okay.
I
That's my
always thought it was
stirring recommendation.
I always thought it was weird that that Murder on the Orient Express trailer had "Believer" by the Imagine Dragons on as the trailer song, which
Oh yeah, I forgot
I
that.
like that song, but I don't know. I just was it was just such a weird flex to do
It
that.
should have been so much better, that movie, but both of these should have been way better, unfortunately. So we'll see if they end up making any more. I doubt it. But and also the whole backstory for Poirot's mustache, we did not need that.
Yeah, we did not.
What? But what's your next pick?
So my final choice, and I could have sworn I thought I had recommended this at some point, but I suppose I hadn't. This is called Zathura. This was directed by Jon Favreau, and it's basically Jumanji in space. That's literally what it is. It's about a pair of brothers who who are stuck at their dad's house for the weekend, and the younger brother's like, well, let's play this board game that I found. And the older brother just couldn't be asked. And just as a joke, like the younger brother does a turn and it launches a meteor shower on their house. And next thing you know, they're in space and they're literally in the game itself. And the only way out is to finish it. It literally is Jumanji in space. However, with that said, it was a movie I really liked as a kid, and I think it still holds up pretty well now. Josh Hutcherson is the older brother, and he's gone on to do success. The younger brother, I'm not sure what happened to him. Maybe he retired, I'm not sure, but I haven't seen all that much of him. I'll have to look it up later. Tim Robbins plays their dad, and it was always nice to see him. His role is very brief. You only see him in like two scenes in the opening, and then one scene at the end when the game is over. Kristen Stewart plays their older sister, and in one of the turns, she actually gets frozen in the bathroom, and so she's like stuck like this for a good chunk of the movie. And there's one scene where Hutcherson literally grabs like a can of hairspray and a lighter and is like gonna defrost her like that. And the younger brother's like, "Are you crazy?" And Hutcherson's like, "We can't just leave her like this." And is like, maybe we should read the instructions. And I don't know, it was like you're just willing to blowtorch your sister to get her out of this ice palace thing. And they also come across an astronaut who is stuck in basically in the purgatory of space, and he's played by Dax Shepard, and I thought he was good here too. It's definitely it's definitely tense at times. There's a robot that still terrifies me to this day. So it's definitely like know your kids before you show this to them. But at the same time, I definitely give this a modest recommendation for families, of course.
Yeah, I've never seen this one. Would you say it's better or worse than these new recent Jumanji movies?
Um, well, the first Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, had no right being as good as it was, or being as fun as it was. I was sitting there like, new Jumanji movie, awesome. But I swear, walking out of there, I was like, that was so much fun. And the next level was honestly kind of good too. I liked the idea of what they did with putting the people in different characters this time. Like instead of the Alex Wolf character going into the Rock's body, he goes into the Kevin Hart body, and they do different avatars. I like the spirit of that. So I think I like Zathura just a bit more. I think there's a bit more imagination to it, and Favreau had to work just within the house, so there's a lot more stretching in order to be creative. However, with the caveat of the two Jumanji movies we've gotten have been far better than they've been any right to be.
I liked the first Jumanji. I wasn't a big fan of the second one, although I liked Awkwafina. She was fun in it, but I can't even remember exactly, to be honest, why I didn't care for it. It's been so long. But yeah, I the first one was very much a surprise. Well, my last pick is one of my costume dramas. You know, I love my period piece movies, and this is The Young Victoria. This is from 2009, and this movie is about Queen Victoria and her becoming queen and her also falling in love and marrying Prince Albert, who was the great love of her life. And Queen Victoria is played by Emily Blunt, so you know it's going to be amazing. She's so good. And then Rupert Friend is playing Prince Albert, and he's great. They have great chemistry throughout the whole movie, really good. But it's got a great cast, huge cast: Paul Bettany, Miranda Richardson, Jim Broadbent, Mark Strong. Just the list goes on and on. Really love the story of Queen Victoria and her romance with Prince Albert. I really loved the show Victoria that was on PBS for like 4 seasons. It was really good. So I like this story, and it is incredibly well made. All the sets, costumes won an Oscar for Sandy Powell, who's like a legend. So the costumes are incredible. They have incredible wedding dress, Queen Victoria's wedding dress. All the acting is great. It's a really cute, sweet. I'm not cute. That's not the right word, but it's a really tender, emotional love story. That's true. That actually happened. True story.
And stupid question, but Victoria would eventually become Queen Victoria. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, it's all about her assuming the throne and also getting married. That kind of all happened around the same time.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
A lot going on.
Yes, she's busy. And then she ended up having 9 children.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
yes.
In more ways
S-
than one.
yeah. So, it's a good one. Like I said, Emily Blunt is great in it. So, if you haven't seen it, I think it's definitely worth a watch. So, there we go. We did it. Let's go over our recommendations real quick. So I have the Bob's Burgers movie, and you can also watch Bob's Burger, the show. I have My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I have The Valet, Death on the Nile, and The Young Victoria.
And I have The Kingsman, In Time, Source Code, Detroit, and Zathura.
So there you go. That is a wide variety. So let us know if you are listening, what you think of our recommendations. If you've seen any of these, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter. And Ryan, how can people find you?
People can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. There's, of course, my YouTube channel, which is just called Ryan Cam. On the channel this week, I just dropped my first reaction to Train Spotting from 1996. That movie, whoo-wee, it's
I've
certainly
never seen it.
something. It, it's it's not for the faint of heart. That's all I will say.
Okay,
But
good.
it is very good, but it's a lot. That's all I will
Hmm.
say. And then on Wednesday, I'll be dropping Life in the Movies episode 33 with Jacob Martin. We were going to do the September preview. However, due to WB being WB, we're going to pivot slightly and talk a little bit more about that. So that'll be
Mm.
on Wednesday. And then I will be trying to cover, at the very least, I want to cover, shoot, what was it? I want to cover the first couple episodes of Rings of Power. I just want to see what happens because, like I said, haven't been a humongous, like, haven't been really looking forward to it. But as the Lord of the Rings fan in me, I was like, you got to at least try it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then I'm also going to try and have a review up for Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul at the very least. So if you all haven't checked me out, please do.
Cool. Y'all should definitely check that out. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. And check out the Hallmarkies podcast. Got lots of fun stuff going over there. Some interviews and just I think really good content that we got coming out over there. So please take a look at that. And if you are listening to this episode on iTunes, please leave us your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. 5 stars. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have the patron group and merch store, which is a lot of fun, and all the information is in the description. So take a look at that. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.